The day was bright and full of joy as 6-year-old Daniel ran around his backyard wearing a red shirt and a big smile. Balloons danced in the warm wind, and the sound of children laughing filled the air. Daniel's mom, Lisa, had planned everything perfectly. It was 1991, and Daniel had been talking about his birthday party for weeks. He loved video games more than anything, especially his new Game Boy Color. He had begged for one for months, and now, finally, he had it. As soon as he opened the gift, his face lit up. He jumped up in the pile of wrapping paper and showed everyone the Game Boy and the games. "Look, I got Boxel and Alleyway," he shouted happily. Lisa took a photo of Daniel smiling wide with his gift. That photo would later be printed and placed on the fridge, where it stayed for years. Everything seemed perfect that afternoon. But then, sometime between the cake and the opening of the second round of presents, Daniel disappeared. It happened fast. One moment he was there, playing under the big oak tree with his cousins, and the next moment he was gone. At first, people thought he had just wandered off. Maybe he went inside to use the bathroom. Maybe he was playing hide and seek. But after 15 minutes of searching, the mood changed. Lisa started calling his name louder. Neighbors came to help. Within an hour, the entire block was looking for Daniel. The police were called, and search dogs were brought in, but there was no trace. No signs of a struggle, no broken fence, no open gate. Daniel had vanished without a sound or clue. The police questioned everyone, especially the adults at the party. Nobody had seen anything strange, and nobody had noticed Daniel walking off. Lisa couldn't sleep for days, then weeks, then months. The case went cold, but Lisa never gave up. She kept Daniel's room exactly as he left it. His toys stayed on the shelf, his drawings stayed taped to the wall, and the Game Boy box sat quietly in the corner of his room, empty. The Game Boy itself had disappeared with Daniel. Lisa told herself maybe one day, somehow, she would find out what happened. 10 years later, Lisa was walking through a neighborhood she didn't usually visit. It was a Saturday morning, and she had taken a turn down a street with a few houses hosting yard sales. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, just needed to be out of the house. The pain of losing Daniel never fully went away, but she had learned to live with it, just barely. Her eyes moved from old books to dusty lamps, from boxes of dishes to stacks of old DVDs and games. Then she saw something that made her heart stop. On a small folding table covered in toys and electronics sat a blue Game Boy Color. It looked almost brand new despite the years. What made Lisa stop was not just a Game Boy itself. It was the 3 game cartridges sitting beside it, Boxel, Alleyway, and a third one she didn't recognize. She picked up the console slowly, almost shaking. Then she turned it over. On the back, in tiny faded marker letters, was the name Daniel M., written in a child's handwriting. Her knees went weak. It couldn't be, but it was. She recognized the writing instantly. It was her son's. She stared at it for what felt like hours before a woman behind the table asked, "You okay, ma'am?" Lisa looked up and said, "Where did you get this?" The woman blinked. "Oh, that old thing? My son brought it home a while back. Said he got it from a guy who didn't want it anymore. Been in a box in the garage for years." Lisa tried to breathe normally, but her heart was pounding. "Could you please tell me where your son got it? Please, it's very important." The woman hesitated. "I think from a swap meet in Santa Clara. I'm not sure. I can ask him." Lisa wrote down her number and begged her to call with any information. As she walked away holding the Game Boy tightly, she could feel something new inside her. Hope. Real hope. Daniel's Game Boy had surfaced after 10 years. Maybe, just maybe, Daniel was still out there too. The next few days were filled with phone calls, questions, and meetings. Lisa brought the Game Boy to the police. At first, they didn't believe it could mean anything. It was just an old console, but when she showed them the handwriting, they took it seriously. An officer confirmed the serial number matched the one listed in the original missing person report from 1991. That was no coincidence. This was Daniel's Game Boy. It was proof that he, or at least someone who had him, had kept it. Lisa was asked to recall everything she remembered from that day in 1991. She pulled out the old birthday photo, the one with Daniel smiling wide and holding up the Game Boy in games. A detective named Harris, who had recently joined the department, decided to dig deeper. He was young but sharp, and he had access to tools and databases the original investigators didn't. Harris traced the serial number again and found that the Game Boy had been listed in a pawn shop in Modesto in 1998, but under a different name. That name was linked to a man who had recently died, someone with a criminal record and a history of moving around. His name was Stephen K. He had once lived only 10 miles from the spot where Lisa found a yard sale. Now the question became, had this man been involved in Daniel's disappearance? Lisa's mind raced. Could her son have been raised by someone else? Was he still alive? Harris worked day and night. He found Stephen's last known address, then visited neighbors. One woman, remember a quiet teenage boy who lived there for a while, called himself Danny. She hadn't seen him in years. The more Harris dug, the more strange pieces he found. Daniel had never been seen by doctors or in school records after 1991. It was like he had vanished, but maybe he hadn't. Maybe he had just been hidden. Weeks turned into months as the investigation unfolded. Lisa felt both terrified and hopeful. Every new clue brought her closer to the truth, but the fear that it would all lead to nothing haunted her. Then, one rainy afternoon, Detective Harris called with a shaky voice. "We found him," he said. Lisa couldn't speak. "We think it's him," he added quickly. "He's 16 now, living under the name Jacob, at a group home for boys. He came in after being found alone in an abandoned trailer last year. No ID, no parents, and wouldn't talk much. But we showed him the Game Boy, and he cried." Lisa drove 4 hours straight to the home. Her hands gripped the steering wheel the whole time. When she arrived, she saw a tall, thin boy standing in the hallway with a counselor beside him. His eyes were full of fear, and something else. Recognition. Lisa stepped forward. "Daniel," she whispered. The boy's lips trembled. "Mom." And just like that, after 10 years, mother and son were reunited. Daniel had no memory of how he had been taken, or even his full name. His memories were cloudy and scattered, but he remembered the Game Boy. He remembered the birthday, and he remembered her face. Lisa held him tight, refusing to let go. The past was painful, and the road ahead would be long, but one thing was clear. Daniel was alive, and it all started with a Game Boy at a yard sale. Lisa could barely believe it as she stood outside the group home, watching her son through the glass window. He looked older, of course, taller, his hair darker, and his face more serious than the smiling boy she remembered from the photo. But there was something in his eyes that had never changed. She remembered that look, quiet, curious, always watching. The counselors had warned her to move slowly, to give him time. Daniel had lived under a different name for years, and though his body had grown, his memories had stayed trapped somewhere far away. He was safe now, but confused, unsure of who to trust. Lisa took a deep breath and stepped inside. The boy turned toward her, holding the Game Boy Harris had brought him. When their eyes met, something clicked. Not fully memory, not yet, but something deep. She walked toward him slowly. "Daniel," she said softly. "It's me? It's Mom." He blinked and looked at the Game Boy again. I remember a party, balloons," he whispered. "A tree." Lisa nodded quickly, her heart pounding. "Yes, you loved the oak tree and the swing. You ran under it that day. You got that Game Boy as a gift. You smiled so big, Daniel. You were so happy." His voice was hoarse. "Then a man, he said you were busy. Said he was taking me to get more games." Lisa's knees almost gave out. The details were blurry, but they were real. She could see the counselor's eyes widen, realizing that this was not just a lost child. This was a boy who had been taken, hidden, and raised under false care. Lisa reached out gently and took his hand. He didn't pull away. Instead, he clutched her fingers tightly, like he didn't want to let go. Over the next few days, Daniel was taken to a special children's hospital for psychological help. Doctors explained that it might take months for his memories to come back, if they ever did. But Lisa didn't care. Her son was alive. That was all that mattered. She visited him every day, bringing him photo albums, his old red shirt, and the box from his birthday party. She showed him pictures of his room, of his cousins, of his grandparents. Daniel stared at them silently, sometimes with tears in his eyes, sometimes with a soft smile. He said he remembered the smell of pancakes in the morning. He remembered a dog. Yes, their old Labrador. Max. Lisa cried when he said the name. Slowly, the walls began to fall. He let her sit closer. He began to call her Mom again. There were still nightmares. Daniel would wake up shaking, muttering things about being locked in a small room, about not being allowed to speak outside, about a man with a deep voice who always told him to forget the past. Lisa listened to it all, holding him when he cried, whispering again and again that he was safe now. The police continued their investigation. They searched Stephen K.'s old trailer and found a few photos of Daniel as a child, hidden in a box with newspaper clippings from 1991. There were also other items: a child's shoes, drawings that Lisa confirmed were Daniel's, and a notebook with strange rules written in it. No talking to strangers. No asking questions. No memories. It sent chills through everyone involved. But now, the man was dead, and the only thing that mattered was helping Daniel recover and begin his life again. One afternoon, after weeks of careful steps, Lisa brought Daniel back home. The moment was quiet and emotional. The front door opened slowly. The house was nearly the same, though much older. Daniel stepped inside and paused. "It smells the same," he said. Lisa smiled. "I never change your room." They walked up the stairs together. Daniel's room was just as he'd left it, except for the layer of dust and the faded curtains. He looked at the shelf where his toys still stood. He picked up a small action figure and held it in his hands. "I had this," he whispered. Then he looked at the wall. A drawing of a family, a mom, a dad, and a little boy, was still taped there. "I drew that," he said, now crying softly. Lisa walked over and hugged him tightly. "Yes, baby, you did." Outside the house, a neighbor peeked out from her window. Word had already spread. Daniel had come home. People were shocked, but more than that, they were full of hope. Lisa knew the healing would take time. School, therapy, new memories, all that would come later. For now, it was enough that he was safe, that her son, taken from her at 6 years old, was now 16 and sleeping in his own bed once again. And that all began not with police raid, not with a miracle, but with a Game Boy at a yard sale. For the first few weeks, Daniel barely left the house. He preferred to stay in his room, sitting on the edge of his bed, holding the Game Boy like it was a piece of his past he didn't want to lose again. Sometimes Lisa would hear him pressing the buttons, the tiny sound of the game music coming from the speakers, and it would take her back to that birthday morning in 1991. At night, Daniel would come down to the kitchen and sit at the table while Lisa made hot chocolate. He didn't say much, but she noticed small changes. He smiled more often. He laughed once when Max Jr., their new puppy, licked his hand. Slowly, he was coming back to life. Lisa spent her days filling out forms, meeting with child psychologists, and talking to detectives. Everyone wanted to know how Daniel had gone unnoticed for so long. It turned out the man who took him had moved several times, lived off-grid for years, and enrolled Daniel in no schools. He homeschooled him with fake names, kept him isolated, and even taught him to lie about his past. Daniel had no idea he had a mother still searching for him. To him, the life he had was all there was, until that Game Boy unlocked something deep inside. Lisa took Daniel to visit his old elementary school one day. It had changed, but some teachers still remembered the little boy who went missing. One retired teacher, Mrs. Keller, cried when she saw him. "You love to color," she said, gently touching his shoulder. "You used to draw the sun with a smiley face." Daniel smiled shyly. "I think I still do," he whispered. They walked past the playground, and Daniel stopped near the swing set. "I used to swing here," he said, then closed his eyes. "This is where I was before he came." Lisa held her breath. "Do you remember?" she asked carefully. Daniel nodded slowly. "He called me over. He had a van. Said there were more presents." Lisa felt her heart twist, but she stayed strong. "You don't have to say more unless you want to." Daniel looked up at her. I want to. It helps. They sat on a bench, and for the first time, Daniel told her everything. How the man told him his mom was busy and sent him to get something from a van. How he was given candy, then told they were going to store. But they never went to store. Instead, they drove for hours. And after that, his name was changed, his hair was cut, and everything he once knew was erased. I thought, maybe I dreamed you, Daniel said, but I always remembered the red shirt and the cake. I remembered loving that day. As the weeks passed, Daniel's memories came more easily. He remembered his grandparents. Lisa took him to visit them, and it was a tearful reunion. His grandmother hugged him like she never wanted to let go. I knew you'd come back, she whispered. I always knew. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, where he used to eat cookies and drink milk after school. He ran his fingers along the edge of the counter, smiling at how small everything seemed now. Later, his grandfather showed him an old toy box that had been kept in the attic. Inside were Legos action figures, and even a crumpled paper crown from his 6th birthday. We saved it all, the old man said, voice shaking, just in case. That night, Daniel and Lisa sat on the porch, watching the stars. Do you think I can ever be normal? Daniel asked. Lisa reached over and took his hand. You already are, sweetheart. You're just healing, and you're stronger than anyone I've ever known. Daniel smiled and leaned on her shoulder. Thanks for not giving up. Lisa whispered, never. One day, a newspaper reporter came by, asking to do a story on Daniel's return. Lisa was unsure, but Daniel said he wanted to do it. Maybe there are other kids like me, he said. If someone sees my face and remembers something, maybe they can help. They sat for an interview, and Daniel told the world about the Game Boy, the man who took him, and the mother who never stopped searching. The story went viral. People from all over the country wrote letters, some sharing stories of hope, some just sending love. Lisa read each one to Daniel, and he kept them in a shoebox under his bed. They were reminders that the world had not forgotten him, even if he'd once forgotten the world. The seasons changed slowly, and Daniel continued adjusting to his new life. Fall turned to winter, and with each passing week, the boy who had once been lost in time began to step out of the shadows. He started attending therapy sessions regularly and made real progress. Lisa watched as he learned to trust more, talk more, and smile more. It wasn't easy. Some nights, he still woke up afraid. Some sounds, like the slamming of a car door or the beep of a microwave, made him freeze. But he always reminded himself he was home now. He had a mom who loved him, a house filled with warmth, and a world that was slowly opening back up to him. When Christmas came, Lisa decorated the house just like she had every year he'd been gone. This time, though, she had her son back to sit by the fireplace and open presents. He was quiet that morning, but happy. This is the first real Christmas I remember, he told her. Lisa's heart swelled as she handed him a small box wrapped in blue paper. Inside was a photo album. On the first page was a picture of him at his 6th birthday party, holding up the Game Boy with that big smile. Daniel stared at it for a long time. I want to remember everything, he said softly, even the sad parts, because they brought me back to you. In January, Lisa and Daniel were invited to speak at a safety seminar hosted by the local police department. At first, Daniel was nervous, unsure if he could stand in front of so many people. But he surprised himself and his mom when he stood up to speak. He held the Game Boy in his hand. This, he said, holding it up, is what helped bring me home. He explained how memories can hide deep inside, waiting for the right moment to return. People in the audience cried. Some even stood and applauded when he finished. That night, Lisa tucked the Game Boy back into the small wooden box they kept on the living room shelf. Not as a toy now, but as a symbol, a key that unlocked a life almost lost forever. Daniel began homeschooling slowly, working with tutors and trying to catch up on all the years of learning he'd missed. He was smart and picked things up fast. His favorite subject was science, and he dreamed of becoming a vet one day. I want to help animals because they never stop loving, he told Lisa. He even started going to the park alone, sometimes with Max Jr., and sometimes just to read on the bench. Each time he came home, Lisa would feel a quiet relief. She still carried the fear inside her that he might disappear again. But Daniel always came back. He always said, "Don't worry, Mom. I'm not going anywhere." One spring morning, nearly a year after the yard sale discovery, Lisa received a letter in the mail. It was from the estate of Stephen K., the man who had taken Daniel. The letter explained that Stephen had left behind a handwritten note, never sent, found in a sealed envelope by the police. The note said he had once planned to return Daniel, but couldn't bring himself to do it. He said he knew what he did was wrong, but had grown attached to the boy and was afraid of the punishment. The letter made Lisa's stomach twist, but she read every word. It didn't bring forgiveness, but it brought understanding. Later, she showed the letter to Daniel, who read it in silence. When he finished, he folded the paper and said, "I'm not him. I'm not what he did. I'm me, and I'm finally free." Lisa hugged him tightly. That night, they burned the letter in the fireplace, watching the smoke disappear into the sky. By the next summer, Daniel had made new friends. He even joined a local gaming club at the library, where he brought his Game Boy and showed it to other kids. Most of them had never seen one before. They played games, talked about Pokemon, and shared snacks. For the first time, Daniel felt like a regular teenager. No longer the boy who went missing, but just Daniel, happy, curious, alive. On the 1-year anniversary of his return, Lisa threw him a small birthday party. It wasn't big, just a cake, some friends, and a few balloons. But to Daniel, it meant everything. He looked around the room, saw his mom smiling at him, and whispered to himself, "This is what real birthdays feel like." Later that evening, as he sat on the porch watching the sun go down, he turned on the Game Boy one last time. The screen flickered, the music played, and he smiled. He didn't need it anymore, but he was thankful for what it gave him, a way back home. And in the quiet peace of that moment, Daniel finally felt whole.